Hello, flowers are blooming in Antarctica, and that has happened before, but not this much. We are going to talk about today why does that matter and why is it happening. When I started doing this research, in my mind, Antarctica was a big white sheet of ice that had maybe two penguins on it, and that was my full concept of the land. You will not guess the shocking conclusion I came to in my research. To be a little more serious now, looking at this, these photos on the screen are the two native plant species to the Antarctic region. The scientific names are underneath the photos. I will refer to them as Antarctic hairgrass and Antarctic pearlwort. It's just their common names. The first study I would like to talk about was done by a university professor, Nicoletta Canone, the University of Insubria in Italy. She looked at plant life on Cygni Island. It is a research center site in the Antarctic region. During the 10-year span from 2009 to 2019, the Antarctic hairgrass grew as much as it had in the last 50 years together, 1960 to 2009. In that same time window, the pearlwort grew 5 times as much. They're seeing both an increase in the amount of plants being grown, so they're more abundant, and they grew at a faster speed. So both of those are accelerating as time proceeds. The main believed factor that is making this happen is the increasing temperatures in the Antarctic region. It's not necessarily a bad thing for the native species to increase in growth. However, the change in environment means it is possible for invasive species to come into the land now and survive. If these were introduced, it could upset the delicate ecosystem that exists now in the Antarctic. A second study I'd like to talk about briefly as well. It was conducted by the universities of Exeter and Hertfordshire, together with the British Antarctic Survey. This survey used satellite imagery to compare pictures over time. They found that the amount of green coverage across the Antarctic Peninsula in 1986 was less than 1 square kilometer. Checking the same satellite imagery, in 2021 there was just under 12 square kilometers of green growth. They found that between 2016 and 2021, so a 5-year period, the rate of plant growth increase accelerated by 30%. These are some of the challenges that have made it so there are two native species. Something important to note, there are also species of lichens and moss that survive in the Antarctic. So those, in conjunction with the two species I had photos of, form the greater ecosystem of plants in the Antarctic. These are just 4 main reasons that I'd like to talk about. The high levels of UV radiation that comes into the Antarctic, there's a lot of energy coming down. Some plants may like that, some may not. Another important thing to note is that there are drastic changes in day length throughout the year. This is true at both poles of the Earth, Arctic and Antarctic regions. They will experience polar days and polar nights at opposite times of each other through the year, so 24 hours of daylight for part of the year, inversely 24 hours of night at the opposite end of the year. Some other important factors said Antarctica is not just one solid sheet of ice. There is a lot of ice. So there's low water availability for the plants. It's also extremely cold temperatures that make it challenging for most plant species to survive. These factors are being changed by climate change heating up the Antarctic. So cold temperatures are less cold. Some water may be available as ice melts. There are a couple of fears with this. One is that the lichens that live in the Antarctic region do not have a long-term data set collected, so it is hard for scientists to estimate the vulnerability of this plant to changing climates and ecosystems. We do not have a great gauge on if they'll be able to adapt to a changing climate. The second problem, addressing climate change specifically, is that it is not having a blanket effect across the region. The Arctic peninsulas and the maritime areas of the region, so those near the ocean, not further inland, are being influenced more strongly, whereas the inland region is being influenced less currently. Address the inland and outland. Glaciers are a major factor of the Antarctic region. They're a predominant chunk of our land there. Glaciers everywhere are melting, but the rate that they melt at has been accelerated recently. The Antarctica Average temperature has increased over the last 50 years by nearly 3 degrees Celsius or 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit. That's as of 2023. One very notable glacier is the Thwaites Glacier, nicknamed the Doomsday Glacier. Only this glacier collapsing could increase global sea level rise by 1.6 feet. The greater concern that earned this glacier the Doomsday nickname is that to lose this glacier could stop the stability of more glaciers around it and cause a chain reaction of collapses that could add up to 10 feet of combined sea level rise globally. The melting ice from these glaciers prior to collapse could also lead to deep water ocean circulation routes slowing down by 40% over the next 30 years if current greenhouse gas emission rates were to continue. This is disastrous for multiple reasons. Weather patterns would be disrupted in the areas that the deep water paths go near. The sea level would adjust as more water enters and the gravitational pull from large glaciers is lessened. Marine ecosystems would be disrupted from having water that would normally move through not there. So there'd be more stillness, less things moving. The ocean is a carbon sink, which means it takes a lot of carbon dioxide out of the air for us. It would be less effective at doing that if it were not moving as much. It's being filled more, temperatures rise, it loses its ability to take in as much CO2. So the ocean would become a less effective carbon sink, potentially not one at all. These are the sources I used to gather information for this. These are the sources for the images I used. To conclude this idea, it matters that flowers are blooming because we don't know what's going to happen. There is a lot of potential outcomes. Climate change is a large topic that affects a lot of things in our lives, and we will see the outcome of this likely in our lifetimes. So hopefully everything goes well.